Unschoolers don't teach. Have you heard this? Is it one of those statements that makes you think, that's why we don't do unschooling, too fringe, too kooky, and not going to help the kids at all in the long run? Or maybe you're already unschooling and you're thinking, don't say that. That's what the big battle cry against unschooling is, or one of them. Well, what made me start down this path for you here on the podcast was that Rolling Stones article singling out the unschooling mom on TikTok who said, we don't teach. And then that was the hook they started their article with. Even within my own unschooling community, people have said, I just wish she hadn't said that. It's such a lightning rod kind of thing. It is what the general public, as well as the traditional homeschooling community, often uses to dismiss unschooling. Comments like, those unschooling families don't do anything. They're not teaching their kids anything. Unschoolers are being neglectful. Those kids are going to have horrible futures. Lots of scary thoughts all wrapped up in we don't teach. But that's not really the truth of it. You have to back up a little bit more to see the bigger picture. There are a few factors at play here. I don't think you're getting the whole story. Stay with me. That's what we're going to talk about. When you understand it, you'll be able to toss away at least one of your worries about unschooling. But first, if you're new here, I'm Sue Patterson. Welcome to the Unschooling Mom2Mom Podcast. I'm a mom to 3 grown unschoolers, all in their 30s, now with degrees, certifications, businesses, homes, families, all the things. I'm the human behind all things Unschooling Mom2Mom with a big website full of free and paid unschooling resources just waiting for you over there. So tap into it all. Each month I do some kind of special, and this month my courses are half off. So that's a pretty great deal. And I have some really exciting things coming. All of this is because you, as the parent, just like your kids, have different learning styles and preferences. And whether you like learning from a PDF or a course or a one-to-one coaching call with someone like me or with a community of other unschooling parents, you have options that will work. You can really get your questions asked and answered, feel supported, and basically strengthen your confidence in unschooling. And if you're not new to the podcast, welcome back. Thanks for listening. Please leave comments about what you think, like, subscribe, everything that tells the powers that be to share the Unschooling Mom2Mom podcast, or video if you're listening or watching on YouTube. I would really appreciate that. And if you hear people talking about that unschoolers don't teach comment, go ahead and redirect them to this podcast. I think it will help. On to that scary and really confusing idea about not teaching, and why any sane person would say that that's a good idea. Well, the TikTok unschooling mom who said we don't teach our kids isn't the first. She's actually kind of young, so I'm doubting she was involved in the conversations of the 90s or early 2000s. But it was very commonplace to want people to stop using the word teaching in order to get everyone to focus on the importance of learning. As it turns out, teaching and learning are not as synonymous as we've been conditioned to believe. As a society, we have conflated these two terms or ideas, teaching and learning. We tend to think teaching causes learning, and so learning would have to require a teacher. Well, we all know situations where the teacher brought information and the student was distracted or not interested. No learning happened. Think of looking out the window while the teacher goes on, or the kids thinking about leveling up in their video game instead of the topic the teacher wants to discuss. There's a reason that Charlie Brown depiction of the teacher voice going wah, wah, wah resonates with everyone. It's often the mind-numbing, get-it-over-with way kids view their classroom experiences. On the other side, we've all had that experience of our kid coming up to us and telling us some random piece of information, and we're like, how did you know that? And they saw it online or talked to a friend, or they don't even remember. But they learned without a teacher and without a lesson plan. Those things were more like school system trappings that had more to do with that system and not much to do with the students. Think of all the things you've learned after you graduated from school. You wanted to know something or do something, and you needed to learn something to achieve your goal. So you Googled it, or you found a YouTube video, or you talked to that friend of your uncle's, or some other path that got you what you needed. You didn't say, I must find a teacher. I must find a class. I must learn a bunch of information that isn't really pertinent to what I need so I can get that one nugget of information I'm missing. So when people say that unschooling kids don't learn, nothing could be farther from the truth. They learn in all kinds of ways, compiling little bits of information that are relevant to their goals and help them achieve them. And that is how unschooling works. Unschooling parents help their kids learn how to find the resources they need. They're a tour guide, a researcher, a resource finder, a cheerleader, almost a project manager. Each child identifying their own project, so to speak. Learning is something that's internal. Teaching is more of an external force being placed on the other person. Sometimes they're in agreement with what's being taught, and sometimes not. So that's why we say learning is all up to the learner. They're the gatekeeper, so to speak. But the TikToker is right in a sense. Not teaching or focusing on the teaching over the learning is a part of how unschooling really does work. When we set up a teaching plan, we're trying to get our kids to learn what all the other kids their age are learning, regardless of their interest or curiosity. Those things have to take a back seat because the teacher's plan is what matters most. We hear that in the voices of traditional homeschoolers when they express concern that they haven't made it through the curriculum yet or on the schedule they planned. This tug to prioritize the curriculum over what's happening with the learner, that's the problem. Some of the questions I've heard when I talk about this are, okay, but they'll need the basics so that they can do all that exploring on their own. That may be an entire podcast of its own because there's a lot wrapped up in that one statement. A few things. If they truly need it, they'll get it. They're not exploring on their own. Unschooling parents are there answering questions, finding opportunities that fit their situation, and allow the kids to learn and grow. They're a family unit, not something that ends when the bell rings at 3:00. What are the basics anyway? We've all been pummeled by those words. Reading, writing, arithmetic, all of those are to either be able to gain information or convey that we know something or figure something out. Don't those who don't really enjoy reading still learn from videos or conversations? Don't we carry calculators with us everywhere with our phones? Do we really write a lot these days? All of us? I think sometimes if we get more details about our concerns and let go of our position a little so we can maybe hear alternatives, we can get a more realistic idea of what's really needed. Another argument that pops up is when they say, I think some things have to be taught. They're not just absorbed organically. I don't disagree with that, but the learner has to want it. And if they're somehow, even kindly, coerced to think it's in their best interest, that's really not the same as wanting it themselves. It might give you some results you want. I'm not sure all that teaching effort is going to pay off in what the learner actually retains. Anyone with more information can be a teacher of some sort, though. I teach my kids how to ride a bike or how to tie their shoe or how to use measuring cups to make brownies or a variety of different things. But just like potty training, you can work and work and work on it, but until they're ready, they're not learning it. Same principle applies to all of this. If the learner wants it, they'll keep it. If they don't, it won't stick. No learning is really going to take place. I can check the box, so to speak, for having taught it. See my air quotes. But if the goal was to have learning happen, that is all up to the learner, right? That's where we can apply that phrase in one ear and out the other. We did that ourselves as kids because the focus was on the system, whatever system we're in, school or traditional homeschooling curriculum. But it's about applying the system to the kid instead of helping them learn. That's the style most familiar to everyone, so it's not easy to shake. I have another podcast, number 7, Teaching, Learning, and Partnering with Our Kids. That would be a good one to follow up on after this. I think I'm going to put this transcript on that same page at the website. That way you can see it right after this one. If you're listening at YouTube or on a podcast platform, I'll link it in the comments. I did make a workbook to help you dive a little deeper. I can help you walk through all of this and see things from the learner's perspective instead of just bulldozing in because you're the teacher or the adult in charge. A lot of these podcasts have workbooks that go with them over in my Creating Confidence membership group. We talk about these kinds of things within the community too, so that may be something you should tap into. One little side note, change doesn't happen overnight, and you can make little changes without a complete 180. These concepts weren't that easy for me to embrace when my kids were growing up, so if you're still a little skeptical, you're not alone. What helped me was seeing examples of these teaching, learning concepts looking differently from how I experienced it as a kid, talking with others who are working on this and aren't trying to shove a bunch of curriculum down their kids' throats. That probably helped me the most. So reach out if you have questions, enjoy the kids, and know that unschooling really does work. See you next week.